It does appear that the British people's mistrust of intelligence documents, the mistrust of governments taking decisions without parliamentary scrutiny, does seem to date back to 2003, that Iraq dossier that you were accused of sexing up. And I know the Hutton report said you didn't, but many people still hold by that. Do you think we are still, when we make decisions about any military action in the Middle East or elsewhere, still dealing with the hangover from the Iraq war?
Certainly, and I think that we talk a lot about learning the lessons of what happened in Iraq and other foreign policy situations that we've had in recent history. And I think there is a real danger that because of that controversy, because of all those difficulties, that the political leaders are at risk of learning the wrong lessons. And one of the lessons that we seem to be learning, and we can talk about the recent history in relation to Syria, but if you track this back to when Barack Obama said that the use of chemical weapons was a red line, and then because of the politics of the various countries in the alliance, and especially actually the UK at the time, if you remember what happened in Parliament then, that red line was not imposed. And I think that we learnt the lesson, if you like, that engaging in these issues is incredibly difficult. And I think a lot of political leaders think, oh my God, Iraq, look what happened to Tony Blair. Every time anybody talks about him, they talk about Iraq, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a way sometimes of avoiding the very difficult things that sometimes have to be done. And I just caught the end of your conversation there with the SNP spokesman. And I do think that sometimes, and this goes for Jeremy Corbyn as well, I think sometimes we talk about the United Nations as though it's like a kind of like an international jury of what's going on. The United Nations is just a collection of all the countries of the world. So it's actually the place, yes, where you try to reach agreement and solve problems, but it's also the place where these problems are often played out. And, you made the point about Russia. The fact is, let's, not beat about the bush on this. The fact is that Putin exploited what he perceived to be Western weakness in relation to Obama saying there was a red line, the red line being crossed. And I fear that that's going to happen again. Do
you feel that Jeremy Corbyn is basically it's a bit of a cop-out to say we should only act with the UN's approval when he knows full well that Russia have vetoed any sensible action, any talks, any diplomacy that could actually have prevented this loss of life from this chemical attack?
Look, if you are to say that you can only ever take any kind of international action, and this isn't just about military action. This could be in relation to climate change. It could be in relation to dealing with migration flows. The big international challenges that require international cooperation. If we say we will only do things based on the United Nations agreeing to every step of the way, then we're never going to do anything. And that's a geopolitical reality, and it's been brought into very sharp relief at the moment. I mean, I know we'll talk about Brexit. It's one of the reasons I'm so worried about Brexit. I think that at the moment, the world has never felt in our lifetime as dangerous as it does right now, and the big power blocks, the reason they're called big power blocks is they have an awful lot of power. And at the moment, there is a sense of instability in those power blocks. With Trump in the White House, which, and I understand, I think it was an incredibly difficult decision for Theresa May to have to make. And one of the reasons for that is people really, you talk about trust in Iraq and that, people really don't trust Donald Trump in the White House. People really don't trust Putin in his motivations. We know that Putin. There's a wonderful book written about Putin called Nothing is True. Again, you talk about trust and truth in politics. It's called Nothing is True, Anything is Possible, How Putin Remade the Kremlin. And that is how he operates. We've seen it in relation to Salisbury. We've seen it in relation to the chemical weapons attack, that they can stand up with a straight face and say, Britain staged this. And however cynical people are in Britain, I don't think there are many, other than the ultra-conspiracy theories, who actually think that the British government would stage a chemical weapons attack so that they could say it came from the Russians. I mean,
I'll tell you what, though, I do worry when I see it on Twitter and some of the things that Jeremy Corbyn says. But I'm going to move on to the actual topic we'd originally got in touch with you about. Alastair Campbell, of course, you've been very much involved in the Remain campaign. Yesterday, the actor Sir Patrick Stewart led a series of celebrities, business leaders and MPs launching a campaign to bring together together all of the anti-Brexit groups to call for what they're calling a people's vote to get the public to have a final say, a second referendum, if you will, on the final Brexit deal. Alastair, you and I are very much on different sides of this debate. As one of the Ramonas in chief, are you ever going to give up?
Well, it's interesting you said it was bringing together all the anti-Brexit groups. One of the most interesting thing, actually, was a succession of people who spoke on one of the VTs that was played there who voted leave, but actually now feel that the Brexit that they're being offered and the mess that's being made in the negotiations, the fact that so many of the promises made have been exposed as being hollow, particularly in relation to the health service.
But now, Alastair, you know perfectly well the polls are not showing that people who voted leave have changed their mind. And indeed, the polls have shown again and again, although it's well within the margin of error, it's always around the 50-50 mark, and that the vast majority of people who voted Remain believe that we should get on with Brexit and respect the outcome of that vote.
But that's because, in part, that is because you have the government, the opposition, most of the media saying what you've just said. We've had the vote, get on with it, shut up. And you said, will I ever give up? And the answer is no. The answer on that, by the way, Julia, is no. I'll tell you why, because I think people constantly go on about people in politics and public life. I think if you really believe something, you have to fight for it. And I think what you've had, you talk about the polls. I think one of the reasons, by the way, as far as the polls are shifting, they are shifting in the direction of people wanting a say.
They're shifting in the direction of people going, get on with it.
Well, no, I'm not saying that people are saying that. Of course they're saying that because they're fed up of hearing about it. They just think, a lot of people do think we've had the referendum, we've told you what to do, get on and do it. But at the same time, when you have a government, as we now have, we have a government that the impact assessment papers that they didn't want to publish, and we now realise why, because on every single scenario that they have planned for, that they have speculated
It
about,
looks awful. Yeah. No, but they're all based on the same Treasury underpinnings, which saw that project fail, which has turned out to be completely untrue.
But this is back. You go on about trust and truth and all the rest of it. You can decide that because you've made your mind up, you're not going to heed any of these arguments. But that is a fact. The British government, which wants Brexit to happen, which is negotiating to try to get Brexit, they have admitted to themselves in their own discussions that there is no scenario that they can get, there is no deal that they can do that doesn't leave the country.
All of the departmental papers are all based on those original Treasury documents, Treasury forecasts, which were already been proven to be untrue. And I just put this finally to you, Alastair. When you talk about trust and trust over the issues of Syria and things like that, and information, intelligence, do you not think one of the key elements of trust in a democracy is trusting that the British people, when they are given a free and fair vote after a very lengthy and very, very noisy campaign, as we saw in 2016, that they can be trusted to make the right decision, and they've made the right decision, and we should move on and enact that decision?
But I do accept.
But is there a but there, Alastair?
Yes, there is a but. Let me tell you why there's a but. I'll tell you why there's a but. Because this is like the biggest decision that we're going to make in our lifetime. Post-war, this is the biggest set of decisions that we're making, and I think that if you go into any major serious contract, if you go into any serious major relationship in your own lives, if you do anything really big, you are entitled to say, okay, you give your instructions. So the people have given their instructions to the government, get on and do it. As they go through the process of getting on and doing it, it's becoming clear, one, that so many of the promises made were false. Two, that the negotiations are going very, very badly. Three, that we are going to be worse off. In those circumstances, if we really trust the people, why not say to the people, okay, the politicians can't decide, the cabinet's divided, parliament's divided, the Labour Party's divided, the Tory Party's divided. Why can't we actually say, now that we know what Brexit is going to mean, you, the people who gave us the instructions to go and do it,
to get a final say. But of course, you realise what that would mean. Of course, it would actually mean if people decided to vote against the terms of a deal, that we would still be leaving under Article 50, and we would have a hard Brexit, which I thought was what you didn't want.
You don't know that. I think
we don't know that. I think we do.
No, you don't, because that is when you have to say, look, the fact is that most of the European leaders, even though I think they probably do think it's probably gone too far down the road now, but I think they are sort of hoping maybe Britain could come back in and that we could sort of reverse Article 50 or at least put it on hold. And
Okay.
I think we're in such a fluid situation, Julia, and I do think that, yes, the message from government, opposition, and most of the media is it's a done deal, nothing can be done. But I think actually more and more people are thinking, hold on a minute, it's not what we promised, it's not going well, it's going to cost us a fortune, we're going to be poorer.
We're
Push
going
it
to
back
get
to
another
us.
vote. Do you know what? I just love how many people love the ideas of referendums when they think they've got a chance of getting their way.